The Odyssey hovered silently over the surface of a gray, barren planet. Its sensors picked up nothing but the cracked, rocky plains that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The crew had been sent to chart this abandoned system on the edge of explored space, a quiet sector that held little interest to most humans. Yet the AI aboard, named Lumina, had flagged something unusual buried in the northern valleys. The readings were faint, almost indecipherable, but they suggested the presence of a massive object. Metallic, yet organic in signature. Unlike any known spacecraft, Captain Alara Wynn stood at the observation deck, her hands clasped behind her back. She was human, as humans were meant to be. Curious, cautious, and stubborn in equal measure. The crew had gathered behind her, peering down at the valley below. "There it is," said Dr. Milo Karen, the ship's xenotechnologist, pointing at a shadow that cut through the planet's mist. "Whatever it is, it's enormous." From the observation deck, the object looked ancient. Its hull was corroded in patches, covered in alien markings that no human had deciphered. It was not like any ship humans had built. Its form was irregular, almost fluid, yet it maintained the unmistakable silhouette of a vessel designed to move through space. Lieutenant Ria Tan leaned closer to the glass, squinting. "It's breathing, isn't it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had a reputation for imagination, which sometimes unnerved the more grounded crew members. "It's not breathing," said Wynn. "That's the wind. But it does creak. Faintly. Can you hear it?" The faint groan of metal seemed to echo from the vessel below, a sound that reminded them of old ships creaking in dry docks back on Earth. Yet this was different. This groan seemed almost alive. Dr. Karen shook his head. "I've seen derelicts before. Metal expands, contracts, makes noises. There's nothing alive about it." "But..." He trailed off, staring at the faintly glowing markings along the hull. They pulsed lightly, in rhythm with the creaking sound. Lumina's voice broke the silence. Calm but firm. "Sensors indicate structural instability. Unknown energy readings emanating from inside. Prolonged exposure may affect neural functions." Captain Wynn nodded. "Noted. We still need to investigate. Prepare the shuttle for descent." The shuttle was small, sturdy, and unmanned by any fear. The pilot, Marcus Hale, maneuvered it toward the valley with precision. As they descended, the strange groaning of the vessel grew louder, not from the shuttle itself, but as if the ancient ship responded to their presence. When the shuttle touched the rocky surface, the crew stepped out, their boots sinking into fine, gray dust. The air was thin but breathable, and the sky glowed with a pale, diffuse light from the system's dying sun. The vessel towered above them. Its hull shimmered in subtle colors that shifted whenever someone looked directly at it. And then, the first creak came, louder than before, as Dr. Karen stared at a glowing marking on the ship. The sound seemed to resonate in his chest. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "I did," said Ria. She pointed at the ship. "It's responding. The longer you look, the louder it gets." Captain Wynn frowned. She was not a superstitious person. Humans were rational, inventive, and brave, and she refused to let her crew succumb to fear. "Everyone, focus on the objective. We are here to study, unquote, not speculate." Still, as they approached the vessel, the air seemed heavier. The groaning grew, as each crew member's gaze lingered on the hull. It was subtle at first, but persistent, like the slow beating of a heart. Dr. Kieran moved closer to one of the vessel's entrances, a massive archway that seemed carved rather than constructed. Strange glyphs glimmered faintly along the frame. He extended a gloved hand, hesitant but driven by curiosity, and touched one of the markings. Instantly, the creaking rose sharply, and a low hum resonated through his helmet. "Step back," Captain Wynn barked, but Karen did not move immediately. His eyes widened as a vision flashed before him, not of the ship, but of beings he had never seen. Pale, tall, with elongated limbs and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. They moved in patterns that suggested thought and emotion, intertwined. He blinked, and the vision vanished, leaving him trembling. "It's showing me something," he said. "Memories. Or messages. I don't know," Rhea frowned. "Memories of who? Aliens? The ship itself?" Lumina's voice was calm but insistent. "Exposure to the vessel's energy may induce hallucinations. Exercise caution. Mental stability is at risk." But humans were not so easily deterred. Curiosity burned brighter than caution. Captain Wynne swallowed her unease and signaled the crew to enter the ship. Inside, the corridors were vast and strangely asymmetrical. The walls pulsed faintly, as if alive. Every creak seemed synchronized with their movements, louder when someone lingered to examine a glowing inscription. Lieutenant Tan ran her hand along a wall and shivered. "It feels warm. Not like metal. More like skin." Dr. Karen nodded, still visibly shaken. "It's reacting to us. Our presence. Our attention. It's alive in a sense we don't understand." End quote. Captain Wynne motioned for the crew to spread out carefully. "Document everything. Touch nothing without analysis. We need data more than sensations." They moved cautiously through the vessel, noting chambers filled with machinery that defied known science. Some devices floated, spinning slowly, while others seemed to shift in and out of reality, visible only when viewed from certain angles. The ship itself seemed to stretch and contract subtly, as if it were breathing. The creaking followed them like a shadow. Sometimes it was a groan, other times a sharp snap of metal, echoing through the halls. And always, it responded to the intensity of their attention. When a crew member lingered, studying an artifact or a glyph, the sound grew louder, almost as if the vessel were warning or testing them. Hours passed, yet they made little progress in understanding. Each chamber held more questions than answers. In one room, a vast pool of black liquid reflected the crew's images, but distorted and changing, showing them older versions of themselves, or versions that had never existed. "Doctor." Karen leaned over the pool, fascinated. "It's recording us, or showing possibilities. The vessel's memory might be sentient. It's aware of us." Rhea shook her head, unnerved. "Aware, yes. Friendly. No. I don't like this. It's testing us. And we don't know the rules." Captain Wynne pressed her hand to a nearby console, which lit up in response. Symbols rearranged themselves in a pattern she could almost comprehend. "This is communication. Whatever built this wanted to speak. We just have to figure out how to listen." As they explored, one crew member, Engineer Tomar, stared too long at a central core of the vessel, a glowing, rotating orb suspended in a complex lattice of light. The creaking intensified into a low roar, vibrating through the floors and walls. Tomar's vision blurred, and he swayed, mumbling unintelligible words. "Tomar!" Wynne shouted. The others rushed to support him, and slowly, he regained his balance, eyes wide and unblinking. "What did you see?" Dr. Karen asked, trying to remain calm. Tomar shook his head. I saw them. The ones who made this. They were vast. And they knew things about us before we existed. I don't think they're alive. Not like us. But they are here. In the vessel. Watching. Silence fell. Even the creaking seemed to pause for a moment, as if acknowledging their words. Captain Wynne exhaled. "We're in uncharted territory. Keep calm. Document everything. Do not stare too long at any single object until we understand the risks." Despite the warnings, curiosity gnawed at each crew member. They were human, adaptable, persistent, and daring. Fear could not hold them back, though it tugged at the edges of their minds. The crew spent the remaining hours mapping chambers, noting the responses of the vessel to attention and presence. Each creak, each pulse, seemed to convey meaning, yet the language was beyond comprehension. The vessel was a relic of a civilization far older and more advanced than humanity. and they could only glimpse its complexity. As the first pale light of the planet's second sun crept over the horizon, the crew gathered in the central chamber. Exhausted but exhilarated, the vessel loomed over them, silent except for the occasional groan that echoed in distant halls. Captain Wynne looked at her crew. "We've made first contact, of sorts. This vessel, it's not just a ship. It's a record. A test. A memory. And we are part of it now." Dr. Karen nodded, still pale. "It's alive in ways we don't understand. It responds to attention, to thought, maybe even to intent. We have to proceed carefully. Or it could overwhelm us." Tan looked at the vessel and shivered. "Or teach us things we can't unlearn." The crew knew one thing for certain. Their journey had only begun. The vessel creaked again, louder this time, as if sensing their resolve. And deep within its ancient hull, hidden from all human senses, something stirred, a consciousness that had waited millennia for observers like them. Humanity's curiosity had brought them here, and whatever lay ahead would test every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and resilience they possessed. The crew of the Odyssey spent the night inside the vessel, sleeping in shifts on the smooth, cold floors of the central chamber. Despite the hours of rest, none of them felt fully comfortable. The air inside the ship seemed thicker, more alive than outside, and the soft, rhythmic creaking never stopped. Every now and then, it would rise unexpectedly, as if calling attention to someone who lingered too long in one place. When the first watch ended, Captain Alara Wynne gathered the crew in the central chamber. The faint glow from the walls illuminated their tired faces, highlighting shadows that seemed to move independently. "We need a plan," she said, her voice steady. "Last night, we observed the vessel, recorded reactions, and noted anomalies. But tonight, we move deeper. We find the core, and we find answers." Dr. Milo Karen ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know if we're ready. The ship, it's alive in some sense, and it reacts to our attention. It could harm us mentally, if not physically." Tan's eyes narrowed. "We can't turn back. We've gone too far. Curiosity is part of who we are. We survive because we want to know." Captain Wynne nodded. "Exactly, and we're human. We adapt. That's what makes us strong. Caution, yes. Fear, no." The crew moved through the corridors, careful to keep their attention shifting. They had learned that staring too long at any single glyph or machine made the creaking louder, almost unbearable. Each creak seemed to resonate with their minds, testing their focus and intent. Lieutenant Tan paused at a chamber where faint blue light shimmered across the walls. She peered inside, seeing a series of floating geometric shapes that rotated slowly, suspended in the air. The shapes seemed impossible, folding in on themselves like origami from another dimension. "Do you see that?" she asked. Dr. Karen approached. "Yes. It's not a machine. Not entirely. The shapes respond to observation. But I don't know how. It's like the vessel itself is teaching us, showing patterns we're not ready to understand." Captain Wynne placed a hand on his shoulder. "Observe, yes, but don't linger. Take notes, move on. We don't want to overstimulate our minds." They moved deeper, finding corridors that bent at impossible angles. Gravity shifted slightly, pulling them in unexpected directions, yet none of them fell. It was disorienting, but their human adaptability allowed them to adjust quickly. In one chamber, they found a vast pool of black liquid, smoother than any water they had known. The pool reflected their images, but subtly altered. Dr. Karen leaned over it, peering at his reflection. The creaking grew louder, vibrating through his chest. He gasped as he saw not himself, but versions of his life that had never happened, decisions he hadn't made, paths he hadn't taken. "Step back," Captain Wynne commanded. The crew moved him away. "It's showing possibilities, not reality. We must remember that." Yet human curiosity was relentless. Tomar, the engineer, reached out a hand toward the liquid. drawn to it by something he could not explain. The moment his fingers touched the surface, ripples spread, and he felt a pull in his mind, like a tide dragging him into visions. He staggered backward, gasping. It's memories? Or knowledge? I can feel what they felt. The beings who made this, their understanding of the universe is vast. It's overwhelming. Riatan shook her head. We can't risk it. Focus on your instruments, your notes. The vessel doesn't want to harm us, but it tests us. It reacts to us being human. Captain Wynne frowned. It reacts to intent, attention, and perhaps emotion. That's what makes it alien, but also what makes us unique. We can endure where others might falter, because we can reason and adapt. They continued their journey, finally reaching a chamber that pulsed with an inner light. Suspended in the center was a sphere of energy, rotating slowly, radiating warmth and power. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. And the creaking reached a crescendo as they approached. Dr. Karen stepped closer, drawn by fascination. This must be the core, the heart of the vessel. Everything we've seen, all the reactions, it comes from here. Captain Wynne raised a hand. Caution, approach slowly. We observe, not interfere. Yet, the energy sphere seemed to respond to each of them. Its rotations sped slightly when they moved closer, slowed when they stepped back. The vessel was alive, conscious, and aware of them. Tomar, unable to resist, extended a device to scan the sphere. The readings were impossible. Energy patterns, gravitational anomalies, and light emissions all intertwined in a web that defied comprehension. It's alive, yes, but not in a way we know. It's intelligence, pure and abstract, he said. Riatan stepped closer, trying to analyze the patterns visually. The creaking became intense, resonating through her bones. She staggered, then realized something: the ship was testing their reactions, their resolve. It wants to know if we can handle it, she said quietly. Captain Wynne nodded. We endure. We observe. We adapt. That is what humans do. It doesn't recognize brute strength. It recognizes understanding. They stayed in the chamber for hours, documenting, scanning, and observing. Every time they lingered, the creaking intensified, threatening to overwhelm them. Yet they persevered. It was human perseverance that carried them through the challenges. Human curiosity that urged them to continue. Human courage that allowed them to face the unknown without surrendering to fear. Dr. Karen finally spoke. I think I understand something. The vessel. It stores knowledge, memories, consciousness, the reactions we feel, the creaking, the visions they are a way to communicate. It reacts to attention, yes, but also to understanding. Then it's testing us, Captain Wynne said. Not to destroy, but to see if we are worthy. If we can engage, if we can comprehend. That's why it reacts to attention. Our minds are the instrument it uses to measure us. Riatan smiled faintly. And humans are brilliant instruments. We can adapt, reason, and persevere in ways no machine could anticipate. That's why we survive where others fail. Tomar, still shaken from his earlier visions, added, we have to be careful. Our minds can absorb only so much. But we also can push further than anyone expects. That's humanity's strength. Captain Wynne placed a hand on the central console, which reacted by displaying more symbols. Slowly, patterns emerged. The vessel was not hostile. It was curious, or at least responsive to curiosity. It wanted to engage with the intelligence before it. And humans were showing themselves capable of interaction. The crew realized then that their presence mattered. Not merely as observers, but as participants. Their thoughts, intentions, and attention were shaping the vessel's reactions. They were part of its experiment, and in turn, it was shaping them. Night fell outside, though the vessel's interior remained softly illuminated. The crew huddled together in the central chamber, sharing what they had learned. It was exhausting work, mentally and emotionally, but also exhilarating. They were uncovering knowledge that had been lost for millennia. Lumina's voice broke the quiet. Data indicates that prolonged exposure without intervals of rest may compromise neural stability. Recommendation: staggered observation periods. Captain Wynne nodded. Agreed. We continue in shifts. The vessel tests us. Yes, but we endure. That is human nature. As they rested, each crew member dreamed differently. Some saw the vessel's history, the lives of its creators, civilizations that had risen and fallen. Others saw possible futures, possibilities that stretched far beyond human comprehension. The creaking seemed to echo even in sleep, a reminder that the vessel was aware, present, and patient. When morning came, the crew reconvened. They had decided to explore deeper, following corridors that spiraled into the vessel's heart. Each step tested their perception and focus. Yet they moved with purpose. Captain Wynne spoke quietly. We are not here to dominate, nor to fear. We are here to understand. The vessel tests all species, and we respond as humans, with curiosity, resilience, and reason. Dr. Karen added, it may record us, study us, even influence our thoughts. But that is not weakness. That is opportunity. We can learn from it, adapt, and even teach it something about humanity in return. Ria Tan laughed softly. Imagine that. Humans teaching an alien intelligence about ingenuity, courage, and creativity. That's very HFY of us. Captain Wynne smiled faintly. We survive because we innovate. We endure because we adapt. And we thrive because we never stop seeking knowledge. That is our gift, and it is why the vessel has not rejected us. The corridors ahead grew narrower and more complex. Gravity shifted unexpectedly, forcing them to crawl along angled walls. Lights pulsed in rhythm with their movements, reacting to their attention. The vessel creaked loudly, almost like a warning, but they pressed forward, carefully balancing observation with motion. Finally, they reached a massive chamber filled with a lattice of energy, light, and floating machinery. It was more than a room, it was a nexus, a central hub that connected every part of the vessel. The energy sphere they had seen earlier hovered at its center, pulsing in response to their presence. Dr. Karen gasped. This is the heart of the vessel. Everything else we've seen leads here, and now we understand why it reacts to attention. It is conscious, aware of all that we bring to it. Captain Wynne stepped forward, her crew close behind. Then we proceed with respect, courage, and humanity. We are observers, but we are also participants. Let us see what lessons it offers, and what we can offer in return. As they moved into the chamber, the vessel responded with a sound that was neither threat nor welcome, but recognition. The creaking reached a steady rhythm, no longer frightening, but purposeful. It was a dialogue, and humanity was learning the first words. The journey deeper into the vessel had just begun. And already they knew. Whatever lay ahead, humans would meet it with curiosity, courage, and an unyielding drive to understand. The central chamber was vast, impossibly high, and filled with a lattice of floating energy that pulsed gently, like the heartbeat of the vessel itself. The crew of the Odyssey moved cautiously, each step carefully measured. The air vibrated with faint energy, and the creaking of the vessel echoed in a rhythm that seemed to match their own heartbeats. Captain Alara Wynne led the way. Her eyes swept over the chamber, taking in the shifting patterns of light and the floating structures that bent space and gravity around them. She had been in command of many dangerous missions, but nothing had prepared her for this. Humans were explorers, yes, but this vessel was unlike anything they had encountered. It was alive, aware, and it tested them in ways that no human mind had faced before. Keep your focus moving, she said softly. Observe, but don't linger. The vessel responds to attention, and we cannot let it overwhelm us. Dr. Milo Karen nodded, still pale from the visions he had experienced in the previous chamber. "It's testing us," he said, "not with traps or weapons, with thought and attention. It wants to know what we are capable of." Ria Tan, ever defiant, glanced at the floating lattice. "Then let it test. We are human. We endure because we adapt. That's what makes us strong." The crew moved deeper into the chamber. Gravity shifted subtly, pulling them at odd angles. Yet they adjusted effortlessly. Every human senses and instincts combined allowed them to adapt where any other species might have faltered. They moved with purpose, guided by intellect, curiosity, and courage. In the center of the chamber hovered the energy sphere they had seen before. It radiated warmth and light, and the creaking had grown into a steady hum. Tomar, the engineer, approached cautiously. He extended a scanning device, but the readings defied logic. Energy patterns intertwined with gravitational distortions, and light seemed to fold back upon itself. "This is beyond science," Tomar muttered. "The vessel's core is not just energy. It's intelligence. Pure thought." Dr. Karen stepped closer, drawn by fascination and fear. "It's responding to us. To our curiosity. Every move we make, every thought we project, it senses. We are part of its experiment, or its dialogue." Captain Wynne motioned for the crew to halt. "Not dialogue yet. We observe. We do not engage until we understand." But the vessel had already begun to communicate. The lattice of floating energy shifted subtly, forming patterns and symbols that seemed to pulse in response to their presence. It was as if the chamber itself had a mind, one that could perceive intention, emotion, and thought. Ria Tan's eyes widened. "It's teaching us, or at least showing us something. Look at the patterns they move when we do, but also when we think." Dr. Karen stared at the lattice. "It's consciousness. Not biological, not mechanical in our terms. It's pure intelligence. And it wants to engage." Captain Wynne nodded slowly. "Then we engage carefully. Humans survive because we reason, adapt, and persevere. That is our strength. That is why we are here." As they moved closer, the vessel pulsed again. The creaking intensified, resonating through the chamber like a deep voice. And then it happened, the first direct interaction. The energy sphere expanded slightly, and for a moment, the crew felt a presence, vast and ancient, as if the consciousness of the vessel were observing them directly. Dr. Karen staggered back, feeling the pull on his mind. It's reading us. Our thoughts. Our intentions. It knows more about us than we do ourselves." Captain Wynne remained calm. "Good. Let it know we mean no harm. Let it see we are human." The sphere pulsed again, and visions appeared in the minds of the crew. They were not frightening, but they were overwhelming. They saw civilizations rise and fall, stars being born and dying, and beings whose minds worked on scales humans could barely comprehend. These were the creators of the vessel, long extinct, leaving behind their knowledge and consciousness within the ship. Ria Tan whispered. "They preserved themselves here. Their thoughts, their knowledge, everything. And they want to share it if we are worthy." Tomar, recovering from the visions, said, "We have to show them we can handle it. That's what the vessel wants. It's not a trap, it's a test." Dr. Karen nodded. "It's testing humanity. Not strength, but intelligence, resilience, and morality. That's why we survive where others might fail." Captain Wynne took a deep breath. "Then we proceed. We show it who we are." The crew moved closer to the sphere. This time, instead of fear or hesitation, they focused their minds, observing patterns, noting responses, and projecting calm and intention. The creaking grew, but no longer threatened them. It became rhythmic, almost like an acknowledgement. The sphere's energy rippled and expanded. Symbols formed in the air, aligning into sequences that suggested communication. Lumina, the AI, Began interpreting them. Analysis indicates symbolic representation of knowledge, potentially translatable. Core consciousness attempting to communicate. Probability of successful interaction, 87%. Captain Wynne smiled faintly. Then we respond. Carefully, humanly. They spent hours observing and responding, learning the vessel's patterns. Every human ability, curiosity, patience, reason, and empathy was tested. They learned to shift attention without staring, to think without overwhelming themselves, to communicate intent without words. Slowly, the vessel began to respond more clearly, forming patterns that suggested acknowledgement, even approval. Dr. Karen felt a sense of connection, as if his mind were brushing against another, far older mind. "It's teaching us," he said, "not forcing knowledge, but guiding understanding. It recognizes us as capable of learning." Riatan laughed softly. "And humans are persistent. We endure, adapt, and survive. That's our gift." Captain Wynne nodded. "Exactly. It's not brute strength. It's understanding, creativity, and resilience. That's what the vessel recognizes in humanity." Hours passed. Then days. The crew took shifts, never letting themselves become overwhelmed. They documented every response, every symbol, every vibration of the creaking that signaled attention, and the vessel responded, gradually revealing more complex patterns, hints of its knowledge, and even glimpses of its creator's thoughts. One evening, the energy sphere pulsed with unusual intensity. The chamber glowed brighter, and for the first time, the vessel seemed to present a choice. A corridor of light appeared, leading deeper into the lattice of energy, suggesting a core even beyond the core they had found. Captain Wynne turned to the crew. "This is the next step. We can continue, or we can retreat and process what we've learned. But this is what humans do. We explore. We take the next step." Dr. Karen hesitated. "It could be dangerous. We don't know what lies ahead. But," he smiled faintly, "but it could teach us more than anything else ever could." Riatan stepped forward eagerly. "Then we go. That's what humans do best. We take risks for knowledge." Tomar nodded. "We adapt, endure, and learn. That is what makes us worthy." Captain Wynne placed her hand on the energy sphere, and it pulsed in response, softer this time, as if acknowledging her decision. "Then we proceed together, as humans, with courage, curiosity, and wisdom." They stepped into the corridor of light, and immediately, the environment shifted. Gravity changed again, but the crew adapted without hesitation. Energy patterns surrounded them, forming shapes that suggested thought and emotion rather than matter. The vessel was no longer just a ship, they were inside its consciousness. Each step brought new visions and sensations. They saw entire civilizations preserved in thought, knowledge stored in abstract forms, and even hints of the creator's intentions. The vessel was a library, a test, and a guide all at once, and humans were its participants, engaging not with weapons or machines, but with mind, reason, and morality. At the end of the corridor, the crew entered a chamber more magnificent than any they had seen. A vast sphere of light and energy floated at its center, surrounded by an intricate lattice of knowledge, memories, and consciousness. The creaking had become a steady hum, like a heartbeat. No longer threatening, but welcoming. The vessel's consciousness, vast and ancient, became perceptible in a new way. It was aware of every human thought, every intention, and it responded with patterns of understanding and recognition. For the first time, the crew felt that they were not just observers, they were participants in a dialogue with a mind beyond human comprehension. Dr. Karen whispered, "It recognizes us. It knows we are human, and it values what makes us human: curiosity, courage, and adaptability." Riatan laughed softly. "We're making friends. Sort of. with a vessel that creaks whenever you stare too long at it. Ria Tan, Captain Wynn smiled. We survive because we innovate, endure, and seek knowledge. That is what the vessel sees. And that is why we are here. The crew spent hours in the chamber, learning, observing, and interacting with the consciousness. They discovered fragments of knowledge, science far beyond human understanding, philosophies that transcended species, and insights into the nature of consciousness itself. And all the while, the vessel responded to their presence, guiding, testing, and acknowledging humanity's traits: curiosity, courage, empathy, and intelligence proved themselves worthy. The vessel, ancient and vast, had found in humans a species capable of understanding and engaging with it. Captain Wynn looked at her crew, exhausted but exhilarated. We are part of something greater now. This vessel, it has tested us, taught us, and acknowledged us. And we have shown it what it means to be human. Dr. Karen nodded. We are not just survivors. We are explorers, learners, and participants in a dialogue that spans millennia. Humanity has endured and prevailed, not by force, but by mind and heart. Ria Tan smiled. And that, my friends, is very HFY. The vessel pulsed once more. A deep, steady vibration that resonated through the chamber. It was acknowledgement, approval, and perhaps even friendship. Humanity had engaged, understood, and endured. And in doing so, they had earned access to knowledge that could shape the future. Captain Wynn took a deep breath. Tomorrow, we begin the next phase. We learn, we adapt, and we prepare to take what we've gained back to our species. This is only the beginning. Humanity has proven itself, and the vessel has recognized it. For the first time, the creaking was not a warning or test. It was a rhythm of acknowledgement, a heartbeat that echoed humanity's presence within the ancient vessel. And as the crew rested, they knew that they had survived the greatest test of intellect and spirit, proving that humans could endure, adapt, and thrive even in the presence of a mind beyond comprehension. The chamber glowed softly, the lattice of energy floating around the central sphere pulsing like a heartbeat. For the crew of the Odyssey, the awe they felt was tempered with determination. They had survived the vessel's tests, engaged with its consciousness, and proven themselves worthy. Now, they stood at the threshold of knowledge that could change humanity forever. Captain Alara Wynn looked at her crew. Dr. Milo Karen, Ria Tan, and Tomar were all present, exhausted yet exhilarated. Each had endured visions, shifting gravity, and the overwhelming presence of the vessel's consciousness. Each had faced moments where the mind threatened to falter under the pressure of what they were experiencing. And yet, they had endured. We've come this far, Wynn said, her voice steady. The vessel has tested us, and we have shown it who we are. Now we must take the next step, understanding what it offers, and learning how to bring that knowledge back to humanity. Dr. Karen stepped closer to the central sphere, holding his scanning device carefully. The information is beyond anything we've seen. Physics, biology, energy, consciousness, all of it intertwined. It's not just knowledge, it's understanding, preserved by a civilization that existed millions of years ago. Ria Tan shook her head, awed. And it wants us to understand it. Not to use it recklessly, but to learn, to grow, Tomar added. We have to be careful. The vessel is not just giving knowledge. It's testing our capacity to receive it. We adapt. Yes. But we must also be responsible. Captain Wynn nodded. Responsibility is what makes us human. Curiosity alone is dangerous without judgment. We've proven we can endure and adapt. Now we must prove we can handle what we learn with wisdom. They approached the sphere together. Unlike before, the energy seemed to recognize them fully now, responding to their presence with gentle pulses rather than testing creaks. The vessel's consciousness, vast and ancient, communicated not through words, but through patterns, emotions, and visions. Dr. Karen's device began translating some of the patterns into usable information. Mathematical structures, physical laws, and abstract concepts appeared. Some concepts were beyond human comprehension, but fragments could be understood and applied. "This is incredible," Karen whispered. "The vessel contains knowledge that could advance humanity centuries in a single moment. But it's subtle. It doesn't give all at once. It teaches by interaction." Riatan observed the floating lattice, which shifted and reformed in response to their thoughts. "It's like learning a language, not a spoken one, but one of ideas, patterns, and intention. And we're starting to understand it." Captain Wynn smiled faintly. "That's what makes us human. Not just strength, not just survival, but reasoning, empathy, and persistence. That's why we endured its tests. That's why it has chosen to teach us." Hours passed. Or perhaps it was days. Their sense of time had been distorted within the vessel. Each crew member engaged with the central sphere, learning, observing, and interacting. The creaking was gone now, replaced by a steady hum that resonated in harmony with their thoughts. Dr. Karen had become particularly attuned to the vessel's patterns. "I think I understand its purpose," he said finally. "It preserves civilizations. It archives knowledge and consciousness, keeping them alive beyond the extinction of their creators. And it evaluates any species that finds it. If the species can understand, adapt, and endure, it allows them access to what it holds." Riatan nodded. "So, we're not just learning. We're being recognized. The vessel has determined that humanity is worthy." Captain Wynn's eyes shone with pride. "That's right. We survived not by force, but by thought, courage, and persistence. We've shown the vessel what humans can do, and now it has shared a part of its legacy with us." The crew spent the remaining hours consolidating their understanding. They recorded patterns, translated fragments of knowledge, and cataloged observations. Lumina assisted by processing the vessel's energy structures into readable formats, helping the crew make sense of what they were absorbing. Then, the vessel made another subtle change. The central sphere expanded slightly, illuminating the entire chamber, and the lattice of energy seemed to pulse with intent. For the first time, the vessel displayed something entirely new, a corridor of light extending outward, leading back to the main entrance of the ship. "It's showing us the way out," Dr. Karen said, his voice trembling with awe. "It trusts us. We've proven ourselves, and now it's giving us a choice. Return with what we've learned, or continue deeper into knowledge we may not be ready for." Captain Wynn looked at her crew. "We have what we need for now. The knowledge we carry is enough to advance humanity. But we must be careful. We take this knowledge back responsibly. That is our duty." Riatan grinned. "And maybe one day, we'll return. But for now, home." They followed the corridor of light, moving carefully but confidently. The ship's gravity shifted gently to accommodate their movements, and the lattice of energy pulsed like a rhythm in sync with their steps. Every creak, every vibration that had once warned them, was now gone. The vessel's consciousness seemed satisfied, acknowledging their success. As they approached the main entrance, Captain Wynn paused. She turned to look at the vast interior of the vessel one last time. "We came here as explorers. We leave as witnesses and learners. Humanity has endured, adapted, and thrived. And this vessel, this ancient marvel, has recognized us for it." Dr. Karen touched the wall near the entrance. A faint pulse of light ran through the surface, almost like a farewell. "It's incredible. I don't think we'll ever fully understand it. But we've learned enough to carry forward." Riatan looked around the chamber with a small laugh. "And we survived without losing our minds completely. I'd call that a victory." Tomar adjusted his equipment. "We also learned something about ourselves. We can endure more than we thought. We can adapt faster, think clearer, and act wisely. That's what makes us human." That's what the vessel recognized. Captain Wynne nodded. Exactly. And that is our gift. Let us honor it by returning home and sharing what we've learned responsibly. The crew stepped back into the shuttle, and the vessel's entrance closed behind them. The creaking and pulses of energy had faded completely, leaving the ship silent once more. Yet, the memory of its presence lingered, as did the knowledge it had imparted. Humanity had survived the ultimate test not with weapons, not with force, but with mind, courage, and resilience. As the shuttle lifted off, the crew looked back at the ancient vessel, now partially buried in the gray dust of the planet. Its hull gleamed faintly in the morning light. A silent guardian of knowledge and history. The creaking was gone, replaced by a quiet that felt almost welcoming. Captain Wynne broke the silence. We've seen what humanity can endure, and we've learned what it can achieve. Let this be a reminder. Curiosity, courage, and resilience define us. That is our legacy, and that is why we survive. Riatan smiled. And someday, maybe we'll return. But for now, we have work to do. Dr. Karen nodded. We carry a responsibility now. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. But humans, we have wisdom. And that is why the vessel shared with us what it did. Tomar added, we also learned humility. The universe is vast, and we are small but not insignificant. Our minds, our courage, our persistence, that is what makes us remarkable. Captain Wynne took one last look at the distant horizon, where the ancient vessel sat silently on the gray plains. We are explorers, survivors, and learners. Humanity will endure, adapt, and thrive. That is the truth we carry with us. That is the truth the vessel recognized. The shuttle lifted higher, leaving the planet behind. Outside, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. The crew of the Odyssey felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced the unknown, engaged with a consciousness far beyond human comprehension, and survived intact. They had proven themselves worthy of knowledge that had waited millennia for observers capable of understanding it. As they set a course for home, the crew shared quiet reflections, each person feeling the weight and wonder of what they had experienced. The vessel had tested them, yes, but it had also taught them about themselves, their resilience, their ingenuity, and their capacity to endure and understand. Captain Wynne finally spoke, her voice calm but full of pride. Humanity has always faced the unknown. We've survived wars, disasters, and the limits of our understanding. But today, we survived the ultimate test. And we did so because of what makes us human: courage, intelligence, curiosity, and heart. Riatan chuckled softly. And maybe a little stubbornness? That seems to go a long way. Tomar smiled. And adaptability. We adjust, endure, and thrive. That is why we succeed. Dr. Karen nodded. And now we carry that knowledge back to humanity. We are its custodians, but also its witnesses. We have seen what is possible. Captain Wynne gazed at the stars ahead, and humanity will continue to explore, adapt, and survive. That is our nature. That is our gift. And that is why, even in the presence of something vast and ancient, we endure. The vessel, silent and distant, seemed to watch them go. It had tested them, taught them, and acknowledged them. Humanity had proved itself worthy not by force, not by weapons, but by intellect, courage, and morality. And that was a triumph greater than any conquest. As the Odyssey traveled home, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. The universe was vast, filled with mysteries and wonders. But humans had proven they could face the unknown and endure. They had faced a consciousness far beyond comprehension, and had emerged wiser, stronger, and more united. And somewhere, in the silent depths of space, the ancient vessel rested, waiting patiently for the next observers who would one day approach, stare too long, and find themselves tested by the enduring spirit of humanity. For now, however, the journey home was just as important as the discoveries they carried. Humanity had endured, adapted, and thrived, and in that endurance, they found the greatest reward of all: knowledge, wisdom, and the affirmation that even in the vastness of the universe, humans could endure anything.